Welcome everyone to Goodknits. I'm Sherry and today is my winter knitting plans video. I'm going to be keeping with my typical trend, which is one season I tend to have no yarn, very open plans, and then the next season I have all the yarn and very concrete plans because I didn't get to them the previous season. So this is going to be the season where I have all the yarn and I only have a few projects that I know I would really like to knit. And I'm going to take you through those today. So unlike my autumn knitting plans video where I had a bunch of themes and ideas, this one's going to be pretty short and sweet because my plans are fairly set in stone. I say that, I do tend to change a lot, but at the moment I have yarn for almost everything that's on my list, so it's just a matter of casting on and getting going. So winter knitting for me is actually going to be a little bit different than the past couple seasons because I am starting a new full-time job on January 2nd, and therefore my knitting time is going to be cut quite drastically because for most of 2024 I had been laid off, so I took some much needed time off. That gave me a ton of knitting time that I never would have had otherwise. And then in the second part of the year, I was freelancing 3 times a week, but that still left me 2 days plus all my weekends and evenings to knit. So in 2024, I knit a lot more than I typically would. Now that I'm going to go back to working full time, I just know myself, my knitting is going to be cut down. Also because I'm ramping up at a new job and there's going to be a lot to learn. I will also have a longer commute, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to get a spot on the train most days so that I can actually sit and knit. But knowing the commuting in Amsterdam and the Netherlands as a whole, trying to get a seat during rush hour is challenging, so I also can't really expect that knitting is going to be possible during that commute. So that's also why you will see very few items in this list because I'd like to be quite realistic about what I'm going to be able to achieve so that I don't set myself up for failure. The very first project that's on my list is the Puro Cardigan by Rui Yamamuro, and this actually was not in my fall knitting plans video. Originally I had planned to knit the Zipper Sweater Light by Petite Knit. And if you've been watching my podcast, you know that I had bought the Peruvian Highland Wool in the color Nougat, which was, meant to be this heathered brown. I had expected it to be darker, which is what I was picturing for the zipper sweater. And since it didn't work out in the color that I wanted, I decided that I would try to find a different project for this. I realized that in my Instagram, I kept saving this Puro cardigan over and over again. And when I looked at the gauge, I figured I could probably make this yarn work if I pair it with a mohair. And also because I don't like the color of this on its own, or it's not quite what I was picturing. It's not that I don't like it, it just wasn't what I wanted. I decided, based on a lot of input from all of you, that I was going to actually pair it with a darker brown. So I have since bought the Gepard Kid Seta in the color 485, and it is this really, really dark, chocolatey, rich brown. And so I'm hoping the two of these together will really balance each other out and make a really beautiful cardigan. And I've really been wanting a really dark brown cardigan. So this won't be quite exactly what I was expecting in that realm, but it will get me closer. I really, really love the boxy yet tailored shape of this cardigan. It's not typically what I would gravitate towards. It's a little bit oversized for me, but it just looks like it's going to have such a beautiful fit. And when I mentioned wanting to knit this in the past, people have said that they really, really love how this cardigan works up and how it fits on them. So I'm really excited about this. This is going to definitely be, I think, my first cast on in the winter because I also don't think I have to swatch for this. I went back and checked my weekend slipover V-neck from Petite Knit, which was knit in the same yarn combo. And on, I think, 5.5mm needles or 5mm needles, I got exactly the gauge this pattern calls for. So I will be sizing down on needles on this as the pattern calls for 6.5mm needles. I don't even own 6.5mm needles anymore. I know for sure that I will get gauge based on that weekend slip over. The only difference being that was knit in the round, this is knit flat, so it might be a little bit off, but given the oversized fit of this, I think it's gonna be fine. So it says in the Ravelry notes for this that the shoulder construction of the cardigan was inspired by the one often seen on trench coats with set-in sleeves in the front and raglan sleeves in the back. So really excited to see how that fit is going to work on me. And also just in general, this is a brand new to me designer, and you know that I love trying new designers. It's definitely been a theme for this year. Really excited to see once I get started on this, how the knitting process is gonna be. Also, a really big thank you to Ursula, a viewer of this channel and somebody that I have really considered a friend this year. She kindly gifted me this pattern for my Ravelry wish list, so it's already in my library, it's ready to go, and I can just cast it on. One downside to this pattern is it is only available in 4 sizes, so sizes 1 to 4, but it does look like the positive ease is recommended between 20 to 40 centimeters. So my guess is because there's such a generous ease, perhaps that's why there's less sizes, but it's just something to keep in mind that I'm not sure this pattern is fully size inclusive, which is one of the downsides. The next pattern that I have on my list is the Lane Loop Sweater by Other Loops. So I chose this pattern because for the last few months, I've been trying to find the perfect project to use this Zealana Kauri yarn. It's fingering weight, and it is in the color K15 Blue Awa. And this was gifted by a viewer, Shilpa, who came to Amsterdam back in May, I believe. We had a knitting date, and she brought this yarn all the way from New Zealand. And this is actually a really interesting yarn because it is 60% fine New Zealand merino, 30% brushtail possum, and 10% mulberry silk. So that's also why I really wanted to find a special project for it, because this is probably a yarn combination that I will never work with again unless I happen to go to New Zealand. So I really want to make sure that I use this for a sweater that I expect to get a lot of wear out of. And I think this pattern is perfect because for the most part, it is kind of a basic stockinette sweater. However, it has these beautiful line details and shaping details going, you know, around the bust and waist. And I think this yarn will work really well for that because you don't necessarily need to really highlight those lines. They can get a little bit lost in the color, but I think in this color they will show. I do need to pair it with a mohair, and I realized that I actually had this Filcolana Tilia yarn in the color 270. I believe it's called Midnight when I checked the Filcolana website. I only have 1 ball of this. I bought it years ago to make, I think, a headband with, and I actually have a Arwetta from Filcolana to do just that with. I might do it this season, but I figured I would just go ahead and swatch these 2 yarns together. And I really, really like the way that they're turning out. I think this is a really beautiful blue color. It, you know, isn't navy, but it's also not too bright. So I think, you know, if you show it against this, this is just going to be a really nice color combo. So I do need to go ahead and buy more of this. It also means I can't really use this mohair, which I swatched with, because it's probably not going to match the dye lot since I bought it probably 5 or 6 years ago. So I'll go ahead and buy enough mohair to make this sweater with. But I have gauge swatched. I hit gauge, which is 20 by 28, and therefore I am ready to cast this on when the yarn comes in. So the sweater comes in sizes extra small to XXL. Again, not the most size inclusive range, and the positive ease is 20 to 25 centimeters. So I will be knitting a size small on 4mm needles for this. And I believe I have 9 balls of this, so I should have more than enough yarn. So that's the Lane Loop Sweater by Other Loops, and that will kind of be my basic stockinette, hopefully somewhat simple knit for the new year. The next project on my list is actually a test knit that I was selected for by Lizzie from Hive Knits, and it is her new TAO Sweater design. Admittedly, I am super behind on casting this on just because I've had some stuff going on in my personal life the last few weeks, and I've let her know that I will be very late with getting going on this. Thankfully, she's been understanding. So I don't know so much if I'm really going to be part of the test knit or if I'm just more casting this on because I still really enjoy the pattern. I would still like to participate in some way. This is one where I've mentioned before I had this Gepard Kid Seta in the color Red Panda, color 240. And I was trying to find a purpose for it. So originally I planned to just buy an extra ball and cast on a mohair only sweater. But when she asked me to be part of this test knit, I decided that I would go ahead and use this yarn because I already had it in stash. It didn't work out for my popo jacket. And I would just go ahead and buy a merino yarn to pair it with. So I decided that I wanted to try a brand new to me yarn, and I decided to go with the Lana Grossa Cool Wool Big. So this yarn is 100% virgin wool. It is in the color 1608. I had a really tough time picking the color for this. I think there were 4 different oranges that I bounced between. One, I can't remember the number, but it was called terracotta. This was called red orange, I believe. And truth be told, I was expecting this to be quite a lot darker and more like rusty colored. And this is like really orange, which paired together is not really what I was going for. So one reason that I wanted to knit this sweater specifically is it is knit in a unique stitch pattern called the oat stitch. So it has a lot of nice texture without being an overly complex pattern to memorize. So I did swatch for this and you can see the beautiful texture here. I'm just not sure that I'm loving the orange that this is producing. I was hoping that the mohair would tone it down a little bit more, and it kind of has, but predominantly the orange is really what's coming through, which makes sense. So once again, I'm kind of in a situation where I'm having a tough time pairing this yarn with another solid color. So I am kind of thinking I may cast this on and see how I like it, but part of me wants to just go ahead and actually de-stash this, sell it. I don't know if it's really a color I see myself wearing a lot. And if I'm gonna make a sweater, I don't know if I want it to be in this color because I'm gonna spend a lot of time on it. But I do still really like this color. So maybe I need to go back to just holding this single and finding a completely different yarn for the TAO sweater. So I do still really want to make this pattern. I'm just not sure if I'm happy with the yarn that I've selected. But like I said, I think I'll cast it on because I committed to doing the test knit and then just see how I'm feeling as I go. I could kind of use the complexity of the pattern right now in my life. So it might just be fun to knit for a bit. And then if it's not working out, I just frog it and then, you know, go ahead and figure out what to do with this. So this is one project where it's on my list. It is a concrete plan, but I'm not loving the yarn that I've selected for it. I do actually like the feel of this yarn. It has nothing to do with the Lana Grossa Cool Wool Big. I think, you know, obviously I don't know if this is going to pill, so I can't speak to the wearability of it, but the yarn itself feels nice. It was pretty affordable. I just don't like the color that I picked. And that is, once again, the downside of buying yarn online is trying to get the right color is super tricky. And I am just having the worst luck in the last few months. So perhaps I need to start going to yarn shops a bit more. The challenge is we don't have the best yarn shops. Like there's not a huge selection of the yarns that I use being sold here in Amsterdam. And so I just find it challenging if I want to buy very specific yarns to try. I can't really do that in person here. Switching gears over to skirts, I have decided that I was going to knit another staple skirt by New Wave Knitting, but Melanie, the woman who I hosted the knitting meetup with in December, kindly gifted me the skirt #1 pattern by My Favorite Things Knitwear as she was also knitting it. And so I think I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and actually use that pattern for the skirt that I make. And I've already bought the yarn. I really want to make a tweed version of a skirt. So this is the Isager Aran Tweed in the color Confetti. And I really, really like all the colors happening here. It's a bit bolder than I would typically pick for myself, but since it's a skirt, I figure it can be a little bit fun. I got 2 skeins of this. I am expecting I might need 3. I found a dark gray in my stash from Drops that I think I'm going to hold this with because the pattern does call for either holding with an alpaca, like a lace weight alpaca, or a mohair. I'm just not sure how they're going to work together because the mohair isn't really, really dark, but I'm going to try and see because based on the staple skirt that I made, I do know that if you're just holding the yarn single, it can tend to be a little bit transparent and see-through. So I want to avoid that. I think already using this Aran weight tweed, which has more texture to it, will help with that. But to really make sure that you can't see through the skirt, and since I already have the mohair in stash, it's probably best to just go ahead and try to use those two together, see how I'm feeling about it. And, you know, another thing I could do is go ahead and buy a lace weight alpaca to hold it with, but I don't want to spend more money if I don't need to. I also thought about using the Noro Madara sake yarn for this project, but it is quite a bit more expensive per skein. So that one is 25 euros and this was only, I think 12 is what I paid. So I figured I just bought 2 skeins of this. I am going to be cutting it, I believe, quite close with the yardage. Worst case, I'll go ahead and order another skein. I think because of all the different color variation in this already, ordering another one a little bit later won't be such a big deal. But I did see a few people mention on Instagram and the Ravelry notes that they were able to knit a size small in 2 skeins. So I'm hoping that I can make that work. It just maybe is a little bit shorter than I'm hoping for. We'll see how it goes. I already have the elastic for this already for the waistband, so now it's just a matter of casting it on. I meant to do this quite a few weeks ago and just haven't gotten around to it. So this is a project that I am hoping will just be a very quick, mindless knit, and I can get going on it right away. Then the final project on the list is one that I have already cast on, and that is the Trigradient Shawl by Stephen West, the owner of Stephen and Penelope here in Amsterdam. And obviously this is still on the list because I'm working on it and it's definitely going to carry into winter. But I'm also mentioning it on the list because I think I've decided that I'm going to frog what I have right now. I've been using the Filcolana Arwetta Dijon, which I love the color of, with the Zauberball Dark Autumn. And I really, really like both of these, but I'm not necessarily loving them working up together. I was hoping just for, you know, some really big contrast, which it is, but it's not exactly the look that I wanted. And so I think I'm going to go back to my initial gut on this, which is to pair the Zauberball with more of a deep brown, so closer to the mohair that I showed for the Puro Cardigan. I think that just will be a little bit more wearable. And then I think what I actually want to do with the Dijon is go ahead and buy a few more balls. I think I'll need probably, I have 4 of these right now, so probably 3 or 4 more, and then buy a mohair to pair it with. And I think I actually want to make a sweater in this. I really like the color of this. I think it will be more flattering for me as a garment. And I'm thinking that I will go ahead and make the Cognac sweater by Atelier Castin. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I really, really like the set-in sleeve detail of this pattern. I think it's just a nice classic sweater that I will get a lot of wear out of. Initially, I was actually planning to knit that sweater in this mohair, which I may still do if I hold it double, if I decide not to do the TAO sweater. But I think this Dijon will actually work really well for that. I'm just not sure if I'm gonna make the I-cord only version or the one with the ribbing. Originally, I was thinking to just do the I-cord one. It's nice and simple. But if I go with this yarn, I think I might actually do the ribbed one, which will just have a little bit more of a, I think, polished feel to it. So I want to make sure that, you know, especially with these two yarns, I'm really using them both to their advantage. And I'm just not sure right now that I've achieved that with this brioche, like double brioche color together. I don't think that they pair super well. And based on the comments from my last podcast, it feels like quite a few of you think the same. Some people really loved it, other people really didn't. And I tend to be somebody that should trust my gut a little bit more. And if I already am questioning it, it probably means that I'm going to question it later down the road as well. So best now to just change course and use both yarns in a way that makes more sense for me. I am also finding with the Trigradient shawl that knitting it in the two-color brioche takes quite a lot of mental energy that I'm not sure I'm really going to have for winter. So I might actually switch back to my original plan, which was the Botanic shawl, also by Stephen West. That one just seems like it will be a little bit easier to memorize and knit up quicker, but I would still want to pair it with a darker brown just to balance out that Zauberball. So I guess I am planning to do the Trigradient shawl still, but I'm going to see how I'm feeling. And if that pattern is just too much, I don't want to waste this yarn. I really want to make sure that I'm knitting it up into something, and therefore I may just switch to a slightly simpler pattern or maybe even something from Andrea Mowry. So that's it for my winter knitting plans. As you can see, not a ton on the list this time. I really want to be realistic. I also really don't want to be spending a lot of money on new yarn. So my intent is really to use up what I have, only buy what I absolutely need to, and go from there. Also, at the end of this video, I would typically be saying, you know, if you want to support my channel, I would love if you give me a pattern from my Ravelry wishlist. However, I think for the most part, I also already have all these patterns in my library, and I try not to add patterns there unless I am pretty confident that I'm knitting them. So I think there's one or two on there, but by no means do you guys need to go purchase those for me. I just really appreciate that you're watching and that you have supported my channel this year. Thank you so much for that. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and comment. I would love to hear what's on your winter knitting plans list. Are there any things that we're doing, you know, together? Maybe we create a mini cal. So if you want to stay up to date on how I'm progressing with my winter knitting plans, please don't forget to subscribe and turn on bell notifications. I do hope to get back to posting more regularly in January, but we will see how realistic that is with my new job. I look forward to sharing my progress and also connecting with more of you in the new year. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next episode.